Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. On today's tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to sew this beautiful flare gown with the puffy sleeves and a neck collar. So if this is what you're interested in, you might as well want to relax and watch the video until the end. So for this tutorial, what I have over here, I have my measurements, and then I have my measuring tape, I have my scissors, and I have my chalk, and then my zip for the back. My zip is 55 centimeters long, and then I have my Ankara fabric, which is 5 yards of fabric over there, 5 yards of Ankara fabric, and then I have my lining piece over there. I'll use it to add fullness to the inside, and then I have my net fabric. Okay guys, so the first thing I did over here was I went ahead to measure the down part of my gown, right, the flare part of my gown. So the first thing I did over here was to subtract my full length measurement from my half length measurement, and then after subtracting that, I got 25 inches, right, for the down part. And what I went ahead to do was to measure that I measured that 25 inches from the down part of my triangular form, right, from the down part to the top part. And then what I got over there, when I got that, and then I went ahead to measure from that triangular part, from the sharp edge, right, to where my measurement had ended, and I got 15 inches, and I went ahead to mark that 15 inches round, as you can see what I'm doing over there on the video. And then after measuring that 15 inches round, I went ahead to confirm my measurement, how it was and what I was left with. And then after confirming the measurement, I went ahead to cut the fabric, right, and then after cutting the fabric over there, I went ahead now to measure the remaining full length of my fabric. As you can see, this is where I measured the 25 inches from. I started from the base, from the shorter part of my fabric, and I measured my 25 inches, and then I went ahead to measure it round now. Guys, take note that the reason why I'm using this method of measurement is because I want a little bit of pleat on my waistline, on the flare right there. That's why I'm using this method over here. So the circumference of your waist does not matter right now, because I'll use the remaining allowance that I have left to pleat them on my waistline to achieve a little bit more fullness there on my half length. So that's why I use the method I just used right now. Okay guys, so after measuring everything, I went ahead to take my scissors. After measuring my full length, I went ahead to take my scissors and then cut down that full length, as you can see over there, the flare. And that flare was not enough, so I went ahead to cut 2 more of the same thing. So I had 3 flares right now, because I wanted fullness on my waistline, on my waist circumference. So what I did next was to take my half length, right, and then I ruled my starting line over there. What I did first was to measure my shoulder to my chest point. Take note that I told you in our last tutorial that my shoulder to my chest point is my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 2,5, and then from my chest I went from my shoulder to my bust point, shoulder to my under bust, and shoulder to my waistline. And then I went ahead on the other side, shoulder to chest, shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, and then shoulder to waistline, even though the shoulder to your under bust is not really necessary because we are doing a freehand cutting over there. Then what I did next was that I went ahead to mark all my lines. As you can see what I'm doing over there, I went ahead to rule all my lines. Then after ruling my lines, I went ahead to label each and every part, right, like the chest line, the bust point, the under bust, and the waistline. After that, I went ahead to my starting line and I measured my shoulder measurement divided by 2. and then I went to the chest line. I measured the shoulder measurement divided by 2 as well. Then I went ahead to connect both the lines, as you can see, to form my armhole over there. After connecting my line, and I went ahead to take my shoulder slope, which was 1 inch from the starting line. I took my shoulder slope, and then I went ahead to my neck circumference, and I took 3 inches from my neck width and then my neck depth over there. And after taking the 3 inches, I went ahead to connect the 2 points together for my neck width and my neck depth. Then I went ahead to connect from my shoulder slope to my neck width over there. Then after connecting that, what I went ahead to do was to divide my armhole into 2, right? And then after dividing my armhole into 2, I went ahead to mark half of the armhole measurement. Then I came in by 0.5 inches, 0.5 inch, sorry. And then I went ahead to mark that, and then I went ahead to my bust circumference, measured my bust circumference divided by 4. And then after measuring the bust circumference divided by 4, I went ahead to take my ruler, my curved part of my ruler, and then I connected that 0.5 inch I came in by to the bust circumference over there. Okay, after that I went ahead to mark my nipple point. Guys, take note that what I did over there was to add half an inch to my nipple measurement, for my nipple to nipple measurement, right? I divided my nipple to nipple measurement by 2. My nipple to nipple measurement was 4. I divided by 2 and it gave me 4. And then I added half an inch to it because I'm using a freehand method to cut my fabric. I'm not using a pattern paper. Hence I added the 0.5, and then I went ahead to connect. Then I went to my waistline, and then I marked half an inch on both sides, and then I came down from my bust point by 1 inch. I went ahead to connect a half an inch on both sides to the 1 inch I came down by, right? And then after measuring that, I had my nipple to nipple line, and then I went ahead to mark my waist circumference divided by 4. Then I added my half inch over there. Then after that, what I went ahead to do was to connect from my chest line to my waistline, right? And then after that, there is a difference between the front and the back part, right? Before I did that, I went ahead to add my allowance, the sewing allowance. So I told you that while you're measuring your half length, there's a difference between the front and the back part, right? And then my difference over here was 1 inch, so I went ahead to come down from my bust point by 1 inch, and then I went ahead to come in from my nipple to nipple by 1 inch as well. And then I ruled the line to connect both points together, as you can see, so that when I cut my back part, the front and the back part will be equal over there. So after that, I went ahead to hold my bust dart, right? I went ahead to hold my bust dart, making sure that my chest line over there and the waistline will be connected. There will be no shortage when I'm joining my fabric. So that's what I was doing there. I folded my bust dart over there, and I went ahead to connect from my chest line to my waistline again to avoid any shortages while joining my pieces together. So after doing that, what I went ahead to do was to confirm my measurement if everything was okay. And then we were done with the front part of our half length, right? And then what I went ahead to do now was to take out my scissors and cut each and every part of that place. But before cutting, I went ahead to add half an inch, right, seam allowance to each and every part that was needed. I added half an inch seam allowance down, and then I added half an inch seam allowance to the shoulder part over there, right? Guys, if you're a beginner and you're unable to understand what I'm doing, just watch the video carefully, right? And then you'll understand what I'm talking about. So after adding the seam allowances everywhere, what I went ahead to do now was to cut the front part, because right there we were done with the front part. Guys, take note that when you're using your freehand method to cut your fabric, make sure that after cutting every part of your fabric, make a notch on all the darts over there, like on the bust dart and then on the waist dart. Make sure to make your notches over there so that even if you're doing your sewing later, you understand what's happening over there. So when I was done with the front part, I went ahead to the back part over there. Then what I did first was to measure my zipper line, right, the zip allowance, and then I measured 1.5 inch for the zip allowance. Then I went ahead to measure my shoulder to I went ahead to measure my starting line first. Then I wrote my line. Then I went ahead to measure my shoulder to my bust point, my chest line, shoulder to chest line, sorry, and then shoulder to my waistline, right? And then after measuring that, I went ahead to rule the line. Guys, take note that I didn't measure my shoulder to my bust point because there is no bust at the back, right? The bust is only at the front. After ruling my line, what I went ahead to do now was to measure my shoulder measurements divided by 2 over there, and then also on the chest line I ruled my line over there. Then what I did next was to measure my the neckline, right, circumference, the width of my neck, and the length. The width was 3 inches just like the front, and then the length was 1 inch. And then I went ahead to mark my shoulder slope over there, and then I ruled that to the width, my neckline width, right, as you can see over there. Then I went ahead to divide my armhole measurement by 2, and then I measured my bust point line, and then I went ahead to connect both the lines together. As you can see, I didn't come in by any 0.5 for the back. Then I went ahead to measure my nipple to nipple measurement for the back, and then I ruled my line over there, and then I marked 0.5 inches on both sides, as you can see over there. After that, I went ahead to connect it to my chest line. And then what I did next was to measure 0.5 inches from the zipper line to avoid any zipper bulge, right? Then I went ahead to replace the 0.5 inches line over there. If you don't understand, just watch the video repeatedly and then everything will become clearer. Then what I did was mark my bust circumference and then my waist circumference. Then I added the 1 inch that I had taken for the dart, and then we were done with our front, with our back part. Then after that, I went ahead to cut my sleeve, right, because it's a pleated sleeve. I just went ahead to cut a long fabric which was 12 inches length and then 45 inches width for each sleeve, right? So after that, it was time for me to join my pieces together. So the first thing I did over there was to go ahead to my sewing machine, and then you can see my darts over there. I went ahead to join my darts on the sewing machine first, right? And after joining my darts over there, what I went ahead to do next was to iron my fabric, right? I joined my bust dart for the front and my waist dart, and then for the back part, and then I did everything. And then what I did next was to iron, right? And after ironing, I went ahead to join my lining part to my to the main fabric. Guys, I used the lining so that to give a little bit more stability to the half length, because my Ankara fabric was way too light. And then I did the same thing for both the front and the back part, right? I went ahead to turn the fabric, then I came back, and what I did next was to iron every part. I went ahead to notch the parts first, right, and then I ironed every part for both the front and the back piece. And guys, take note that we are not going to be turning our neckline or our armhole, because our armhole will have the sleeve while our neckline will have the collar. So the thing, we are just going ahead to turn only the sides and the zipper part, right? Those are the only sides we are turning right now. And then after that, after sewing that on the machine, I came back here and I went ahead to iron every part. I went ahead to open each and every part of the sides. Then after opening that, I had my fabric over there. Then after that, what I went ahead to do was to join the back part, right, the zipper line. I went ahead to measure the zipper line and then went ahead to the machine and then joined the zipper part over there. So after joining my zipper part, what I always do is that when I come back, I'll press it with an iron so that I get the line where I'm supposed to place my zipper, right? So that's the main reason for running a stitch. I'll just run a loose stitch on that zipper part, right? And after that, I'll press it with an iron over there so that when I take out the loose stitch, the line will still be there. So after that, I went ahead to run a stitch on my fabric, right? And then after running the stitch, I went ahead to join the shoulder for the front and the back part over there. So that's what I did. And then after joining the shoulder parts, that's what we had over there. We had our half length almost ready. Then what I did next was to go ahead and join the allowance on my bust point and on my waistline. So what I did first was to measure out the allowance so that when I get to my sewing machine, everything becomes very easy for me to join. So after joining on the sewing machine, I had what you see on your video over there, right? And then I went ahead to iron the sides, right? And then after that, I went ahead to just take out the stitch I had made on the back right there. Because it was a loose stitch, it just came out easily. It will come out easily. So after that, I had my half length ready, right? And then I went down to the down part now for the flare part, and what I did was join all the pieces together, right? After joining all the pieces together, now I measured everything to see what I had at the down part and then what I had at the front part over there, the half length over there. And then after doing that, I went ahead to join both the down part and the upper part together, right? I went ahead to join the down part and the upper part together. First, I notched the center of my flare, right? The center of the flare down part. Then I came up to the half length. I also notched the center of the upper part over there. After notching the center part, I'll make sure now that the flare that I have, the half of the flare will go for the half part and then the other half will also go for the half part. So what I did there now was to just place that on my half length, place the flare on my half length, and then I'll go ahead to pleat that round, making sure that the pleats are stable on both sides, right? And then after that, I had what you can see over there. After pleating them, I had what you can see over there, right there. So over here, our gown was 50% ready. So what I did was to measure the neck circumference, right? What I did first, measure the back part of the neck, and then I measured the front of the neck as well, so that I can go ahead to cut my collar over there. So we'll be cutting a two-piece collar, right? For this particular gown, we are cutting a two-piece collar. If you look at the inspiration properly, you see that it's a two-piece collar over there. Okay guys, so the mistake I made while drafting my collar over there that I don't want you to make was that I added the zipper allowance to the collar. You don't add your zipper allowance to the collar. End where the zipper allowance ends, right? Don't add that to the drafting of your collar. So what I did first was to measure the back. Don't start from the zipper line, guys. Start from where your zipper ends, right? So I measured my back part over there and I got 3.5 inches, and then I went for the front part and then I measured that half of it and I got 6 inches, right? And then I went ahead. The first thing I did that I'm not supposed to do was that I marked that zipper line, the zipper allowance, which was 1 inch. You're not supposed to mark that, right? And then I marked my 3 inches for the back part, and then for the front part I marked half of it as well, which was 6 inches. Take note that I'm marking half of my measurement because when I'm doing, I'll cut it on fold. So after that, I went ahead to come up, right, from my back part. I came up by half an inch, and then after that I came up, right, for the first piece of my collar it was 1.5 inch, right. I came down up by that 1.5 inch, and then I marked everything. And then I came up for the front part. I also came up by half inch over there. I didn't come up by the half inch that I came up from the back, right. So I did that. If you don't understand, rewatch it, guys, because I can't explain more than this, right. So after cutting the first piece of my collar, I went ahead to go to the next piece, right. So what I did over there was at the next piece of my collar, I had to cut, I removed the 1 inch for the zipper allowance first, right. Then I curved that to the starting point of my collar, as you can see over there. After that, I went ahead to roll a guideline for the other piece of my collar, right. So I went ahead to come out from the other, or come up from the other point by 0.5 so as to get a straight line. Then what I did next was to come up by 3.5 inches. That's for the length of my the other piece of my collar. Came up by 3.5 inches on both sides over there. After coming up by 3.5 inch, what I did next was to roll my lines to connect the collars, right, to connect the second piece of the collar. And then after rolling my lines, I went to the back piece. I don't want the back piece to be too pointy, so I came out by 0.5 inch, right. And then I came out by 0.5 inch at the end point, and then I went ahead to connect that. And then I went to the front part over there. Then I came out by 0.75 inch, right, and then I went ahead to also connect that over there so as to get those little pointiness at the edge. So after doing that, what I did next was to roll my straight line I rolled my straight line at the end point. Then I went ahead to label the front and the back so that I know where to place that. And then after that, I also labeled for the other piece of the collar, the front and the back part. Then what I did next was go ahead to cut that down. I went ahead to cut everything out, the first piece of the collar and then the second piece of the collar. Just watch what I'm doing and follow what I'm doing on that video. So after that, I had my 2-piece collar over there, right. So now I'll be placing my fabric into 4 pieces because I need my lining and the main fabric. I placed my fabric into 4 pieces over there, and then the front part will be on fold. I went ahead to place that on fold. And take note, guys, I went ahead to iron stay on my fabric because I want stability on my fabric over there. So I went ahead to pin both the first piece and the other piece of my collar. After that, I went ahead to mark half an inch round for my allowance over there. Then after that, I just cut that out, the first piece and the other piece. After cutting that, what I went ahead to do now was to join the pieces together. So I started with the upper part of my collar over there. I have 2 pieces, which one is for the lining and the other is for the main fabric. So what I went ahead to do was to join that on the sewing machine. After joining and notching all the parts, what I went ahead to do is to turn it to the right side, right. I turned my collar to the right side over there, and then I went ahead to iron that. I went ahead to iron it. After ironing, I had what you can see on the video over there. Our collar was already coming together. Then I went ahead to notch the center part of the down piece of the collar, the other piece of the collar. After notching that, what I'll do over there is to take the two-piece collar, and then I start by joining from the other part, right? What I did, watch what I'm doing over there. So after notching the part, what I did first was I went down to identify the good part, the main part, right? And I started from the middle part. Look at what I'm doing over there. I just placed the fabric over there on the piece, on the other piece, and then I went ahead to join that on my machine, right? And then after joining that, I had what you can see over there. Then I went ahead to trim the excesses on my fabric, right? And then after trimming that, I went ahead to turn to the right side, right? And then after turning that, I just took my iron and then went ahead to press that so that I can get the right shape of the collar. So after pressing that, I went ahead to attach that to my gown, right? I went ahead to attach everything to my gown, as you can see what I'm doing over there. I used my pins to tack the collar to my gown before going ahead to the sewing machine, right, to join the pieces together. When you do that, it becomes easier for you, right, to join every piece together. So after joining that, I had what you can see over there. My collar was looking neat and my gown was almost already done. So what I did next over there was I didn't start with the zipper part. I went ahead with the sleeve part, right? Remember I told you we have a puffy sleeve. So because I didn't have enough fabric over there, I just made a short sleeve over there, right? I marked the circumference of my sleeve, and when I got that, I went to the machine and then I ran a loose stitch on my sleeve, right? And then after running the loose stitch there, I went ahead to pleat that to pleat that. After pleating that, I went ahead to attach that to my gown, right? And then for the bottom part of my sleeve, I went ahead to put an elastic over there, right? I went ahead to put an elastic, and then after attaching my elastic, take note that to get my elastic, I measured my round sleeve, right? And then I subtracted 2 inches from the measurement of my round arm, subtracted 2 inches, and then I went ahead to attach my sleeve round for both parts. Then after attaching my sleeve, I had my gown almost ready and done over there. Okay, so over here I was just trying to add fullness, right, to the flare part of my gown. If you want a tutorial on how to add fullness to your gown, all you need to do is type in the comment section interested, then I'll make a separate video on that, because this video was already too long for that, right? So guys, if you're still watching this video up to this point, it means you're definitely enjoying the video. What are you waiting for? Please give this video a thumbs up so that YouTube can refer the video to other soulmates like you and I. Thank you very much. So after attaching a lining to my gown, I had what you can see over there, a very neat and clean base, right? So it gave a little bit of fullness to my flare. Then after that, I went ahead to add my zipper to the back part, which was the last part of my video, right? And then after attaching the zipper, I had my gown fully ready, right? And then I had everything ready over here, looking neat and beautiful, guys. This gown was looking really beautiful. So guys, that's it for today's tutorial. Thanks for watching and see you in my next tutorial. Bye.